the role that he was playing, right? And that's a remarkable thing, to stand up to that, to know that your academic career is constantly being threatened, that you're being vilified by colleagues, other scientists, because you're willing to go outside of the scientific press, the journals, right? To talk to the lay press, to talk to politicians, right? To talk to other non-technical organizations in an attempt to change the world, right? That was something he had no hesitation about doing, no matter what anybody said about him, because he had a quite clear goal in his mind. He wanted to change conditions. It was not enough just to learn things. And I can tell you that it's my belief that by being guided by his own lights, he probably did more to raise concerns about environmental and occupational exposures than anybody else in the 20th century, maybe with Tony Mazzocchi running, a close second, But within the scientific community, I think there was hardly anyone who could match him, and it had to do with this particular skill at marshaling forces to change things. So what's it mean to carry forward his legacy? It's an embarrassment almost to talk about such a thing, in the shadow of such an important and effective man. But I can tell you that some of the work that our Selikoff Center for Occupational and Environmental Medicine, and certainly some of the work of our Department of Preventive Medicine, does attempt to sustain his approach. And some of it's directly connected with past studies that he began. He kind of left things undone that now can be completed or made further use of. And I'll give you a couple of examples. In 82 to 83, our group at Mount Sinai, under Selikoff's leadership, ran to about 17 different cities in the United States and Canada, examining some 3,000 pipe covers. Right? Senior pipe covers have been in the trade at least 25 years. And we did everything to them. We took histories, we examined them head to toe, we took all kinds of specimens, fingernail clippings and fat specimens and blood. And one of the things that Dr. Selikoff did was, in virtually every study he could control, was if you got these people in the room, do everything you can to them. Who knows what you're going to be able to use later on? Science, is a dynamic arena, and maybe 20 years from now they're going to be able to use what we're collecting now, even if we don't know what to do with it now besides freezing. Right? And that's essentially his approach. And in fact, lo and behold, it turns out to be true, because he took blood specimens from those 3,000 pipe coverers and from many of their spouses, and in the ensuing 25 years, right, we kept those specimens, for the most part, frozen. Right? This was a real exercise in freezer management. Right? There was also an exercise in freezer location. The actual freezers were shipped from one part of the hospital to another. For a period of time, we didn't know where they were. Right? But these were enormously valuable specimens. When Selikoff did that in the early 80s, you were just beginning to see coming over the horizon the new genomics and proteomics, studies of what genes are turned on and turned off, activated and deactivated by environmental exposures. That wasn't a developed field. It was barely in its infancy. And it was clearly his expressed idea that we're going to take these specimens, and when that field develops further, we're going to be able to use these specimens to figure out, okay, what's in this blood that could have predicted, right, that this person would develop this disease, because among those 3,000 people, we followed who died from what, up through 1994. So we knew who died from mesothelioma. We knew who died from lung cancer. We knew who died from GI tract cancer, right? And to be able to go then back to serum specimens and say, okay, what's in this blood that is a marker that this disease was going to develop, was something that he anticipated and something that we've actually begun to do. We're working now in collaboration with Dr. Harvey Pass at NYU, who's a mesothelioma researcher and surgeon. And Lord knows we wish we had someone like that right here at Mount Sinai, because we'd be doing it at our own home base. But he's developed a couple markers for mesothelioma. That's the cancer of the lining of the lung, the lining of the abdomen. That's pretty much only caused by asbestos exposure. And he's developed these two biomarkers. One's called mesothelin, the other one's called osteopontin, and he's investigating at least a dozen more. And what's possible, and what we use these serum specimens for once we found the freezers, is to look in these specimens to see how high these levels went of these markers. How much before the disease was diagnosed did the marker rise? And we're doing this in what they call cross-sectional basis, because we only had one blood sample from each of these individuals, right? But we learned a great deal from using these specimens that Selikoff saved in '82 in order to do this later work. The reason why it's important is because maybe 10 years ago, the diagnosis of mesothelioma was a virtual death sentence. Average length of life, 13 months after diagnosis. We're now getting 5-year survivals. Does that really mean cure? We're not sure. But to live 5 years after diagnosis as opposed to 13 months is not a small matter, right? And it has everything to do with how early the disease is detected. If you wait until it shows itself clinically, you're pretty much already out of the range of possibility of doing much about it. These biomarkers may be tools for early detection, and we're going to set up, we hope within the next year, early cancer detection programs for the insulators as well as for other trades that are exposed to asbestos because they have high risk of dying from these asbestos-related cancers. Now, you'd have to say that Selikoff was pretty prescient, when he pulled these specimens and decided to store them. And we're still harvesting the results of his forethought, back then.